Got it. Thank you for that. And, we're about to turn to answer a little bit of the Q&A, although we've been doing our best to answer them in real time in the Q&A feature. Before we jump in there, I just wanted to draw folks' attention to a couple of other things. You'll see a slide up right now for a series of webinars, much like this one, where we'll dig in deeper on different topics about the disclosure avoidance system. And I think some of the more technical questions I see in the Q&A feature, we may be best addressed in those sessions where we can really get into the weeds with y'all. I also wanted to make sure that folks knew, and again, you can access the links to all of those webinars very soon. We'll post links in the update section of our website and in the newsletters. We'll also be archiving recordings to those on the website, so don't feel like if you can't make this particular day or time that the information is not going to be available to you. We'll be right up there. You can tune in later, and never hesitate to ask us questions. Again, I will repeat the email address where you can kind of reach us directly, which is 2020DAS@census.gov. I also want to make sure that folks are aware of how to submit kind of more formal feedback to us on the disclosure avoidance system itself. So, Shelley, if you don't mind hopping over to the next. Oh, you already did it. Here's some information about how to submit feedback. The changes in the PPMF are pretty vast. We know people are going to want to provide their own analyses to this to the sample data, and we'd love to hear anything that you want to tell us about how the algorithm is performing. The input you give us will help inform the final decision making about where that privacy accuracy budget is set, how the parameters work within the system. We'd love to get your feedback by May 28th, and you can send feedback to us through 2020DAS@census.gov. I know you're getting tired of me saying that. And we just put some prompts here of things that would be especially helpful for us. Feedback on fitness for use, like whether the data is working for your particular use case, how you came to that conclusion. If it's not working well for you, are there tweaks we can make to the algorithm that would help it better perform for your use case? Have you seen any of these improbable results or the outliers that would be helpful for us to understand? We'd also love feedback on the privacy side of the question. Do the proposed products present any confidentiality concerns that you want to make sure that we're addressing in the DAS? And finally, really feedback about improvements. Are there improvements that you've identified in how the algorithm is performing that you want to make sure that we retain in that final decision making? Particularly, like if there are types of geographies, error metrics where you're seeing significant improvement, you want to make sure that doesn't get lost in the final decision making. We want to hear about that too. Thanks so much, Shelley. I know that you've got a couple of other slides that show people how to stay informed, where to get more information. We can throw those up as well. And then I'm seeing a bunch of questions in the chat. I know many of them have already been addressed, but Michael, I'm seeing quite a few about the accuracy target. I don't know if you can see them in your window, but people are asking sort of how that quality metric is within the quality metric, sort of more definition around how the geographies function. Are there differences between different race and ethnicity groups? Is there more information that you have about sort of what happens outside that 99%?
So that's a great question, and I don't have that data in front of me. We are actually conducting a much more extensive empirical analysis of the fitness for use of the current algorithm parameters for the Redistricting and Voting Rights Act use cases. We'll be releasing that empirical analysis in the next few weeks, and we'll actually be doing one of the webinars that Meghan mentioned will be specifically specifically focused on that empirical analysis. So I would say it is something we are looking at. We are evaluating it, and stay tuned, and we'll be providing that information.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I do hope people will come back for the other webinars in this series. I also saw a couple of questions in the chat, which I think, have, Michael, you answered, but I just want to make sure that we get this sort of out to everyone listening. I know a lot of people are curious about how we're building the disclosure avoidance system for the data products that are released further down the road, like the DHC and VDHC, the detailed demographic information that many people use for modeling and for tons of other purposes. Have there been any decisions made so far, Michael, that will impact how that process works for DHC and other later data products?
So we're currently working, we've been focusing a lot of our attention for the last several months on getting the PL data tuned and getting ready for production of the PL data this summer. And that has required delaying some of the major decision-making for the demographic enhancement characteristics file. But we are now turning our attention to that and beginning the stakeholder engagement process that will allow us to do the same kind of tuning of the algorithm for the DHC use cases that we've done for the redistricting use cases. That process is ongoing. We will be releasing more information about kind of timelines and data user expectations, but we will be releasing demonstration data for the DHC. We will be doing extensive stakeholder engagement to make sure that we're looking at that we're developing and using appropriate accuracy targets for DHC use cases, and that will be occurring over the coming months.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I think kind of implicit in what you're saying is that the decision-making for that process, we really want to be informed by the data users, by the stakeholders who are the ultimate users of these products. And so I think from my understanding, the decisions haven't been made because we want to get more feedback from the stakeholders before any of those final decisions are made. There are quite a lot more questions in the Q&A. I know we're just 4 minutes from the end. Many of them are specific questions about specific data points in the detailed summary metrics. I think Matt is trying to answer those one by one. But Matt, is there anything else you want folks to know? I know you've taken a look at these Q&As that would help them to know what they're looking at.
I've seen a couple of questions about interpreting the size categories, and in general, people are getting it, absolutely right. It's the top line of the table is all of the geographies, of any size, and then the sort of sub rows, the rows underneath, split it up by size category. So it's counties under 1,000 people, or Federal American Indian reservations under over 10,000 people, or between 1,000 people. And so those characteristics are specific to that set of geographies. That's the idea. I know there were some other questions about, how the largest demographic group was determined, how it was the combination between Hispanic and race. And I was wondering if Michael could address those. Those are some that I cannot quite address.
So unfortunately, I was in the process of reading questions when you asked, and I missed what you were asking me to do. So.
Oh, no problem. I just see a couple of questions about, and maybe it's easy to discuss, a couple of questions about how Hispanic sort of combined with race for these target metrics for the redistricting use case.
Absolutely. So for the purposes of the tuning, we were looking at a subset of race categories. So the Department of Justice, for the purposes of Redistricting and Voting Rights Act enforcement, uses the OMB 11 category race and Hispanicity variable categorization, which is it's a mapping of the larger race and Hispanic origin categories that we actually collect on the census. So on the census itself, we collect 63 race categories, every possible combination of those race categories crossed with Hispanic and not Hispanic. So that gives 126 possible outcomes there, which get mapped to the 12 that are used, the 12 OMB categories that are used by Department of Justice. So the tuning was largely focusing on those 12 that factored Hispanic or not Hispanic into the race categories themselves. And that's what we were primarily focusing on with regards to that specific accuracy target. But we were absolutely looking at the broader 63 category race variable and the Hispanic, not Hispanic crossed with that as part of our broader evaluation of overall fitness for use of the data.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I know there are a lot more questions in the Q&A. We will do our best to follow up with folks to get them answers to the questions that they've asked. Again, don't hesitate to email us with any particular questions, whether you've added them in the chat or not, at 2020das@census.gov. I'll close us out with one final piece. Yvette, you asked about if we'll publish anything on how federal agencies might change how they use census data and funding formulas. To some extent, that is a question that will be answered a little bit further down the road. Most of the data that agencies rely on for federal funding formulas actually comes from those later data products like the DHC, DDHC, or even our population estimates, which are even a little bit separate from this whole process. So we'll definitely be continuing to communicate with folks, especially through that stakeholder engagement process, about how the algorithm is functioning and what other opportunities for differences might exist outside this process as well. I really appreciate everyone participating. I really appreciate your questions. I think we got a lot of good questions already that can help us inform how we develop the rest of the webinars in this series. So I hope you continue to tune in. The next webinar will be on May 4th on Differential Privacy 101. Following questions will proceed in the coming weeks. And again, if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out to us by email. Matt or Michael, any last words before we sign off?
Just thank you all for attending, and we're looking forward to being able to provide more information over the coming webinars.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much.